In this video, we're going to tell you all about the entire comic book history of Agatha Harkness. Agatha is really old. The first appearance of Agatha Harkness is within the pages of Fantastic Four, issue 94. A Jack Kirby and Stan Lee creation, Agatha was originally portrayed as a side character who served as a babysitter for Reed Richards and Sue Storm's kid, Franklin. But if we're going to look at the bigger picture, the more mystical picture, well, Agatha Harkness's story goes way farther than the swinging 60s. Her story starts eons ago at an unspecified point in the history of the Marvel Universe. In fact, all we know is that Agatha was already around half a millennium in age even before the legendary city of Atlantis got swallowed by the oceans. So yeah, our girl here has some years on her. During this time, Agatha met the cosmic entity named Scryer, a mysterious character who's older than Galactus. Back then, Scryer made a promise to Agatha that he would show up when the time came that she needed him. When Agatha became magic, Agatha would then continue living a low-key existence from then on. That is until she re-emerged in a place called Transia during the 1400s. At this point, we discover that Agatha has already become a formidable witch in her own right. In fact, she had a coven during this point in time, a group of other magic users that included the likes of Minoru, Zorik, Karina, and Jaquette Laveau. Now, one thing that you should know in this period is that witch hunts were in full force, and magic users were being hunted down and executed left and right. But Agatha and her coven had a plan to fight these gruesome injustices being levied against witches and warlocks. Push came to shove, and one of Agatha's coven sisters, Jaquette, went with a nuclear option to summon Marvel's Lord of Death and Decay, Valtor, to deal with the Inquisitors. However, summoning this extra-dimensional being came with a price. Jaquette, in spite of her coven protests, sacrificed another one of their coven sisters, Karina, to invoke the Lord of Decay. Agatha would then become ridden with guilt after this. She tried to revive Karina from Valtor's dimension, but she ultimately failed in her mission. Now, so far so good, right? It's almost like Agatha has been portrayed like a bona fide good girl in the Marvel Universe. But let's not get ahead of ourselves here. That's because when we move the clock a couple of centuries later, we find Agatha sometime in the late 1600s. Having left Transia and the mountains of Wundagore, she decided to stay in a little place called Salem, Massachusetts. Agatha started up a new coven, and to her credit, Agatha's intentions in forming this magical group were pretty noble. According to her, this coven was meant to be a sanctuary for magic users to be able to use their powers without being persecuted. But that all seemed like a dream, because Agatha and her coven would eventually fall within the crosshairs of Salem's witch trials. Just like before, she and her kind were hunted down again. At this point during this era, the mutant superhero Firestar got transported back in time right around the same town where Agatha and her coven resided. When this happened, Salem's citizens instantly branded Firestar to be a witch, so they raised their pitchforks and tried to burn her at the stake. Well, Firestar ultimately got away from those crazy fundamentalists, and not long after that, Agatha telepathically gave her a message to come meet with her. Firestar would then come face to face with Agatha, and it's here that we find out that this old witch has been making moves in the shadows. Firestar would find out that the entire Salem witch trials was a ploy. Agatha actually approved of this horrifying persecution since she thought that the magic users of their world needed this kind of adversity to realize their full potential and become more powerful. Now, if you're wondering why Agatha is so hell-bent on making her fellow witches and warlocks up their game, well, it's because she was gearing up for an upcoming war against regular humans. In fact, Agatha even tasked a few of her own coven sisters to just straight up assassinate other magic users they deemed weak. After Firestar found out about all of this, of course she knew that she had to do something about it. For one, Firestar's a mutant, so the whole idea of persecution just doesn't sit well with her. So Firestar and Agatha got into a classic superhuman on superhuman beatdown, with the time-displaced mutant coming out on top. Still, Firestar is no killer, so instead of settling things exclusively with a fistfight, she appealed to Agatha's good sense and made the witch realize that her whole plan to basically feed her people to the proverbial sharks to wage a war is really just messed up. In the end, Agatha realized the error of her ways and decided to lead her fellow magic users away from the eyes of the witch trials inquisitors by creating a community somewhere in the Colorado mountains. Agatha Harkness, freedom fighter. For the most part, Agatha would keep a low profile after moving to the mountains. There, she and her fellow mystics would establish a commune known as New Salem. For a time, Agatha would leave a more or less normal life during this period. She'd even have a son named Nicholas Scratch. But it's not like Agatha would stay in one place forever. She's one jet-setting woman after all. The next time we find her is sometime in the 1700s, in the middle of the American Revolutionary War. At this point, Agatha shifted her focus to becoming more of a mentor to younger generations of women and mystics in the Marvel universe. She's become a part of a secret society called the Daughters of Liberty, a group of superheroes and freedom fighters operating in America. As part of the Daughters of Liberty, Agatha served as a primary teacher in the mystical arts, helping its members fight injustice in the New World with powerful magic. A couple of centuries would pass, and we find out that Agatha had become a bona fide hero during World War II. At this juncture, Agatha found herself drafted into the US newly minted DOU, or the Department of the Uncanny, to help stop the manacle witch Hilda von Hate, with the help of fellow magic users Emerald Warlock and Ghost Dancer. Agatha becomes a nanny. After World War II, Agatha would find herself becoming a permanent US citizen, plus she even pursued a career in being a governess during this time. At one point, the Fantastic Four's Reed Richards and Sue Storm contacted Agatha in hopes of hiring her services to take care of their infant son Franklin. Well, Agatha knew that this was a good opportunity, so she took the job. In this story, Agatha invited Marvel's first family to come home on Whisper Hill after accepting the governess gig to get acquainted with Franklin and the rest of the Fantastic Four. And believe us when we say that this plays out like a good old-fashioned spooky campfire tale. During this adventure, Ben Grimm, aka The Thing, would first find himself falling through a secret door inside one of Agatha's rooms. From there, the villainous group called the Frightful Four would end up subduing the rest of the superheroes. So it was up to Agatha to save the day, and her prospective job as Franklin's new nanny. It's also at this point that we get to meet Ebony, Agatha's trusted feline companion, who also happens to be one magical cat. In her efforts to save the Fantastic Four from the clutches of their foes, Agatha went full Acme novelty on the Frightful Four and basically decimated them one by one. First, she sicked Ebony on the wizard. The villain thought it was just an ordinary cat, but like we said, Ebony is magic. Ebony turned into an actual panther, which forced the wizard to make like a tree and leave Agatha's house. Then Agatha easily disposed of the Sandman by magically turning his entire body into stone. Finally, all she had to do was stop the trapster, was hoodwink him into thinking Ben Grimm was an interdimensional monster using a magical light show in the middle of her study. Oh, and as for Medusa, yeah, she didn't even join the Frightful Four's harebrained scheme. She immediately turned on her villainous allies when she found out that they were planning on disposing of everyone, even Franklin. In the aftermath of this whole debacle, Agatha showed us that fighting evil isn't just all about brawn. Sometimes it's a bit of craftiness and magic that are enough to win the day. Oh, and she got the job, of course. From then on, Agatha Harkness would more or less serve as a supporting character in the Fantastic Four's adventures. For the most part, she'd serve as a solid ally to Marvel's first family, such as during that time that she provided refuge for Franklin and Sue when Namor went on a rampage in the city. Suffice it to say that Agatha Harkness's stint with the Fantastic Four culminated in her helping Franklin control his newfound superpowers. And just to drive home the point that she's not one witch that you should mess with, Agatha actually defeated Ultron too. Agatha meets her greatest student. We all know by now that Agatha might not be an A-list superhero in the Marvel universe, but she's the kind of character who helps make A-listers. There's no better example of this when Agatha Harkness eventually met who would become perhaps her greatest pupil, Wanda Maximoff, aka the Scarlet Witch. During their first encounter, Agatha met Wanda and the Avengers, and she immediately felt that the Scarlet Witch had a deep-seated desire to gain a tighter grasp on her own abilities. So Agatha realized that this must be fate. She quit her job as Franklin's nanny, telling the boy and Sue Storm that her job was done, and took Wanda under her wing. Agatha would continue to hone Wanda's skills until they reached a point where she had imparted all her knowledge to her pupil, which happened around the same time as Wanda's marriage to Vision. But it's not like Agatha walked off into the sunset after this, because little did she know that her son Nicholas had become one bad apple over the years. At this point in time, Nicholas had fathered 7 kids, each possessing great magical abilities. These guys dubbed themselves as Salem's 7, and they and their dad promptly took control of New Salem, the town that Agatha built. But that wasn't enough, because they went on this propaganda war to brand Agatha as a traitor to the town. Agatha would get trapped in an alternate dimension once Nicholas and his kids got a hold of her, but it was ultimately worked out when her former employers, the Fantastic Four, came to her rescue. However, this was in no way the last time that Agatha's grandkids would serve as a thorn on her side. At some point, Salem 7 re-emerged and was able to take over New Salem again. And when they captured Agatha, they didn't play around with alternate dimensions this time, they strapped her to a post and burnt her at the stake. Eventually, Wanda would avenge her mentor and defeat Salem 7. However, this event served as a springboard for what would become one of Marvel's greatest tragedies. Wanda turns on Agatha. You see guys, Wanda's encounter with Salem 7 brought about a whole convoluted plot point about mystical energies and other Marvel plot devices that we just won't get into too much detail here. The only important thing that you should know here is that Wanda managed to magically make herself pregnant with the mystic energies that she absorbed during her fight with Agatha's grandkids. Time passed, and Wanda would discover that Agatha was alive again for some reason, although she wouldn't go into the specifics about her apparent resurrection. More jarring, however, was when they find out that Wanda's kids were originally made from Mephisto's soul. And to make matters worse, Mephisto absorbs these children back into himself, basically taking them out permanently. The shock of these revelations and the fact that she lost her kids nearly drove the Scarlet Witch mad. So to help her cope, Agatha did something that's shady but altogether understandable. She mind-wiped Wanda to make her forget that she ever had children. Eventually, Wanda would find out about Agatha's mind wipe and would confront her old mentor. Wanda, in a battle, ends up defeating and eliminating Agatha. So far we've seen Agatha die once or twice, but hey, you can't keep a good witch buried for too long, especially one who lives in the Marvel Universe. The return of the witch. Agatha Harkness would then return to the land of the living after Natalia, the Scarlet Witch's mom, performed a rite meant to summon Marvel's goddess of witchcraft, which then inadvertently resurrected Agatha as well. She then decided to go back to Wundagore to spend the rest of her days in relative peace, practicing witchcraft without interruption. However, her little retreat was eventually cut short when she saw a vision of, well, the superhero Vision taking out his fellow Avengers. And it wasn't like this was a random hallucination, because Agatha did the unthinkable and took out Ebony just to see the future. Poor kitty, I guess that's the price to pay for dabbling in dark magic. After seeing this dark event from the future transpire, Agatha went on to let the Avengers know about it before going back to her personal matters. Now, if you're sad about Ebony's death, don't be. That's because this magic cat came back as soon as it left. Although it's not explained, we next find Agatha with Ebony, who's alive and well again as this old witch went back to instructing the Daughters of Liberty. Agatha would resign from the Daughters of Liberty shortly after that and instead take up a job as a faculty member at Strange Academy, which is basically the premier school of magic in the Marvel Universe. But here's the thing, the main reason that Agatha left her job at the Daughters of Liberty and went straight to Strange Academy was because she learned that a couple of descendants of her former Coven sisters are attending that school. Now, do you remember Karina, the witch that Agatha tried to save from Valtor's dimension? Well, at this point, we discover that Karina's time in the dimension of decay had turned her into a powerful, vengeful magic user. She even started calling herself Corrosion, and she planned on taking her revenge on the world by destroying it. But Agatha and her new pupils, Nico and Zoe, had something to say about that. The three witches banded together to defeat Karina, and after a climactic encounter with their enemy, Agatha found out that her youth got restored, and she's an absolute magical hottie again. The further adventures of Agatha Harkness so far. As of this video, Agatha's latest adventure came in the form of Marvel's event called Contest of Chaos. In it, Agatha formulated a scheme to forge a new Darkhold, an immensely powerful artifact of dark magic. To do this, Agatha tricked her old student Wanda into possessing her body and ripping the heart of a god from her, which is basically the Darkhold's conduit. Then Agatha mind-controlled and drafted a bunch of superheroes like Wolverine, the Human Torch, Storm, Venom, White Fox, and Cyclops to help her achieve her goal. But this was not before she pitted them against other superheroes from the Marvel Universe in a tournament-style contest that served as their audition for the role. Eventually, the sorceress Clea caught wind of Agatha's plans, so she tried to stop her in a classic sorcerer v sorcerer duel on the astral plane. Clea would then seek the aid of the Avengers to stop Agatha's plans, and it all culminated in a final face-off that saw a huge explosion that left Agatha washed ashore somewhere. At that point, a little boy approached Agatha. When she asked him where his mom and dad are, the boy revealed that he had no parents at all, but that's because he's the new Darkhold made manifest. At that point, the boy transforms into a monstrous creature floating above Agatha.